obviously we know the areas of need for the Phillies. Bullpen arms and the outfield. And there are a couple of names that have been brought up.
Before we get into these, were you surprised at all that Jim said yesterday he thinks it's clear the bullpen is the bigger issue?
I've been reading that, actually. There's been a good amount of sources that have said the Phillies are going to try to prioritize the bullpen more than...
Does that mean that they have internal Jose Alvarado fears?
Well, that's why some of the names
because it's weird all of a sudden
up.
now it's like, well, the bullpen's clearly the bigger need. And it's like, is it though?
I don't think it is, in my opinion. I think I trust Jose Alvarado more than I trust a platoon situation with like a Weston Wilson. Like, I think that
I don't know anymore. My Jose Alvarado
like to trust Jose
trust
more.
Is fading. So I guess it makes sense. But you hear that stuff now and you wonder internally,
right? Are
they having some Alvarado panic?
What I keep reading is nobody has an official quote or like somebody said this, but every article that I've read has alluded to like the Phillies might be prioritizing the bullpen more than an outfield because they will just look to platoon in the outfield. But when you look at the offensive production or lack of
Rosarena and just forget about a platoon.
Right, exactly.
That'd be
because
cool
the offense, in my opinion, when you look at the last 3 series, you had a great series. You sweep the Dodgers. You scored 10 in the first game. It's awesome. The vibes are high. You know, we're all getting irrational. And then the next 3 series, the A's, the Pirates, you now have the Twins where they're struggling. And a big part of that struggle is they haven't been able to score runs. Mm-hmm. And this team has been doing a good job offensively. So if the bullpen is the priority, a name like Tanner Scott has been thrown out there. It has been said in one of the articles I read about the reasoning why they would try to bring in a Tanner Scott is because of Jose Alvarado's struggles. And now he's been down. Now, some of the numbers on Tanner Scott, he is, as some execs say, one of the best relievers available on the market.
I think he's the best, unless Mason Miller is made available.
Yeah, well, apparently the A's aren't looking to move Mason Miller, so that's why Tanner Scott's name has jumped up the ranks.
So that means, Renee, it's going to cost you.
Correct. He is an unrestricted free agent after the season. He's had 41 appearances, 42 2/3 innings pitched. He's 6-5 with 16 saves, a 1.27 ERA, a 1.008 WHIP, 48 Ks, 1.92 Ks per walk, and his walk rate has decreased each month. Now, for Tanner Scott, the Marlins have absolutely been struggling.
Alvarado's walk rate has increased each month.
So you have a guy that's on the downward path and a guy that's trending upward. And the Marlins have struggled, and we all know they are a team that has been rumored, Jazz Chisholm, all these different guys that they're looking to possibly move to be able to rebuild. And when you have one of the best true closers in the game in a Tanner Scott and his numbers as we look at, he just came off of his first All-Star selection of his career. He's been a great addition for them. He's a lefty. He just turned 30 years old, and he has a 3.66 ERA over his 8-year career. And he would honestly be what the Phillies would have as like a rental. He's someone that, as we said, is going to be a free agent after this year. So the price could change because of that. But he is someone that, given the struggles of Jose in the bullpen, you could bring in a Tanner Scott and he could help solidify as a high leverage guy.
Yeah. He's going to cost you because in June, John Heyman basically named like the 4 World Series favorites as the teams interested in him. It was the Dodgers, the Orioles, the Yankees, and the Phillies. Now, the Yankees have their own problems, and Juan Soto came out yesterday and said, it's going to take more than me and Aaron Judge to win a World Series here. So you wonder if they've fallen off.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're
the honeymoon phase is over.
Yeah, but then you're competing with the Dodgers and the Orioles, perhaps. And just this Sunday, Bob Nightingale keeping a close eye on him. So Tanner Scott appears on their radar when you're, dealing with teams on the doorstep of a championship. It's going to cost you. So my good friend Pat Egan did this little deep dive yesterday on some recent closers that have been traded around baseball to kind of understand, what it's going to cost you type of thing. So these are some of the examples of high leverage bullpen arms at the time. Craig Kimbrell went from Atlanta to San Diego. He was traded with B.J. Upton. He went for 2 vets and the Padres' number 4 and 15 prospects. Aroldis Chapman went from the Reds to the Yankees for the Yankees' number 8 and 24 prospect. And included in that trade was Caleb Cotham. Chapman from the Yankees to the Cubs went for a lot for a rental, as Pat points out, prospects number 1 and number 6. Josh Hader in 2022 went from Milwaukee to the Padres for their number 9 and number 3 prospects. Edwin Diaz, he was a little different because he was packaged with Robinson Cano at the time. But they went to the Mets for the Mets number 3 prospect, Jared Kelenic, and the 6th pick in the draft that year. So to give you Tanner Scott is that rental. He's probably going to cost you something in like, your 6th and 12th ranked prospect, something in that type of range. So it's not like a debilitating trade.
Yeah.
It certainly gives you a back end guy that you have confidence in. He's having a phenomenal year. He's going to make himself a lot of money next year. I would classify Tanner Scott as a big splash at the trade deadline if that's the guy they get, because then all of a sudden you're looking at the way Soto's been pitching recently. Sir Anthony's back. You got Strahm, who's had a couple hiccups, but normal. Orion's been phenomenal this year. Hoffman's been phenomenal this year. Alvarado, we know the ups and downs with, more down lately than up.
Yeah.
You throw a Tanner Scott back in there, I mean, that's a bullpen that nobody wants to see in a series. Yeah. So I totally get where they're coming from. It does kind of feel like there's a good chance they go after this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to what do you think will, if you had to choose come postseason, what do you think could be the biggest Achilles heel for this team? Not having a bullpen
last year,
arm,
I would say,
not having a... Yeah, because
I mean, game 6 and 7, the bats went cold, no doubt about it.
Right.
But Rob Thompson was kind of, in a way, forced to go to Craig Kimbrell too often.
Right. And even Orion, who wasn't really ready, and had to go back-to-back games.
And I can't even blame Rob for not going to Orion more, because Orion had given you, 3 regular season appearances and a couple in the playoffs.
And two of them were like the Met series.
Like in the NLCS, I think he was at 8 innings on the year or something. So I totally understand why he didn't go to him. But man, when you talk about throwing out a bullpen, which everybody knows in the playoffs is so important, of that magnitude,
yeah,
I mean, that's filthy. You all of a sudden become, I think, hands down the best bullpen in baseball, and that's an immense strength for them.
I think the hardest thing is we remember both of those being major issues. The bats went cold, and then we were all blaming the fact that Craig Kimbrell and Orion Kerkering had to be used in situations where it just felt like they were forced, they weren't ready, high leverage. I do feel like another thing on the offensive side, though, that's a difference is back then the Phillies were home run or bust, and it hasn't really been that this season. Now, of course, as of late, as they scored 2 runs yesterday, literally just on a home run.
Yeah, literally a home run.
It actually completely goes against what I'm about to say. But when you look bigger picture at this season, not just last night's game, they have done a better job. We've seen them sprinkling some bunting. It's been a mixture of home runs, singles, doubles, just even sac flies, whatever it takes to be able to keep the inning alive, get on base. So they have done a better job of tweaking their offense to be able to have more versatility to it. And the bullpen is the same. I mean, you have a better Jeff Hoffman, you have a better Matt Strahm, you have a much better Orion, and even just a much more prepared Orion. Jose, unfortunately, has been the issue because had he been pitching better, I think it's a no-brainer that you would go. You still would probably bring in a bullpen arm, but you wouldn't need somebody like a Tanner Scott. You maybe are just bringing in, a middle reliever type of a situation. But for Orion, for Jose,
that bullpen would be. I'd be hard. I know 2008 was phenomenal, and you had guys like Scott Air and J.C. Romero, like your minimal contributors really like play major roles for you. And Ryan Madsen was spectacular in front of Lidge. But like on paper, if you were to add Tanner Scott to this bullpen, I would have to think it's the most talented bullpen I've seen in my Phillies life.
It'd be really
good.
He's
that good this year, Tanner Scott.
On top of knowing how the starting pitching
just
with Zach and Ranger being able to get back to healthy, the return of JT, which helps overall with pitching. And now you add and have the truly the best bullpen. I mean, this team from the jump, spring training, had predictions of being the best bullpen. But this would lock you in as absolutely being the best bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about Tanner Scott since the first Marlins series of the year. Remember when we came out of that series? I think they lost it. And I was like, I know who I want, Tanner Scott.